The massive alien warship Vorthan's Pride drifted silently through the void, its hull scarred from countless battles. Inside the command chamber, Admiral Kex then stood before a holographic display showing tactical reports from across the galaxy. His four eyes scanned the data with growing unease. Another colony lost to the humans, reported his tactical officer, Zilnara. The Kepler system fell in 3 days. No Setabaivers. Kexthen's mandibles clicked nervously. The humans had been expanding across the galaxy for only 50 years, yet they had already claimed territory that took other species centuries to secure. What made it worse was how they fought. Other civilized races followed the Galactic War codes, structured battles, honorable retreats, protection of civilians. Humans ignored these entirely. "Show me the battle recordings," Kexthen ordered. The hologram shifted to display footage from the Kepler battle. Human ships moved like predators, using tactics that defied military logic. They sacrificed smaller vessels to position larger ones for devastating attacks. They used civilian ships as decoys. Most shocking of all, they fought to the very last ship, never surrendering even when defeat was certain. "They fight like wild beasts," muttered communications officer Velthor. "No honor, no mercy." They turn every battle into a slaughter. Kexthen had studied every human conflict recorded by galactic intelligence. The siege of New Geneva, where human defenders held out for 8 months eating protein paste and drinking recycled water. The Battle of Titan's Gate, where a single human cruiser rammed itself into a Zilani dreadnought rather than surrender. The humans seemed to view death in battle as preferable to defeat. "Sir," Zilnara interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. High priority." The hologram changed to show Counselor Marathas, a wise Altarian whose people had helped establish galactic peace 3 centuries ago. His usually calm demeanor seemed strained. "Admiral Kexthen, the Council has reached a decision regarding the human threat. We cannot allow their expansion to continue. Their methods violate every principle of civilized warfare." Kexthen straightened. "What are your orders, Counselor?" "The Terran Republic has requested a diplomatic meeting. They want to discuss territorial boundaries and trade agreements. The Council suspects this is merely a delay tactic while they prepare their next offensive. We want you to attend this meeting as our military representative. With respect, Counselor, I am a warrior, not a diplomat. Precisely why we chose you. Your reputation precedes you, Admiral. 67 victories, commander of the largest battle fleet in the Outer Rim. If the humans see that we take this meeting seriously enough to send our greatest military mind, perhaps they will understand the futility of continued aggression." Kexthen felt doubt creep into his thoughts. Where is this meeting to take place? A neutral station in the Procyon system. The humans have agreed to bring only a single diplomatic vessel. You will command a battle group of 12 ships, a show of strength to demonstrate that we will not be intimidated. After the transmission ended, Kexthen reviewed the intelligence reports on human psychology. Every analysis reached the same conclusion. Humans were unpredictable, aggressive, and dangerous. They had evolved on a world filled with predators, which explained their savage nature. Unlike other spacefaring species who had developed peaceful societies before reaching the stars, humans had carried their violent instincts into space. The journey to Procyon took 4 days. Kex then spent the time studying human military history. Their homeworld had suffered through countless wars, each more destructive than the last. They had invented weapons capable of destroying entire planets, then somehow managed to avoid using them on each other long enough to reach space. It was incomprehensible to species like the Vorthani, who had achieved global peace before developing gunpowder. "Admiral," Velthor reported as they approached the meeting coordinates. "Sensors detect the human diplomatic vessel. It's small." Kexthen examined the readings with confusion. The human ship was barely the size of a Vorthani courier vessel. It showed no weapons signatures, minimal defensive capabilities. Beside his mighty battle group, it looked like a minnow surrounded by sharks. "Perhaps they underestimate us," suggested Zilnara. "But Kexton felt a chill of apprehension. In every report he had read, humans never underestimated anything. Their seemingly reckless tactics always served a greater strategy. If they had sent such a small ship to meet his battle group, there had to be a reason. "Take us to the station," he ordered, "and keep all sensors active. I don't trust this." As the Vorthani fleet approached the meeting point, Kexton couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. The humans had agreed too quickly to this meeting, been too accommodating about the location and terms. In his experience, when an enemy made things easy, it meant they had already found a way to make things very difficult. The diplomatic station hung in space like a metallic flower, its rotating sections creating artificial gravity for the various species who might use it. Admiral Kex then boarded with a small honor guard, their ceremonial weapons gleaming under the station's lights. Protocol demanded this show of military dignity, even in diplomatic settings. The human representative was already waiting in the main conference chamber. Kex then had expected someone intimidating, perhaps a battle-scarred military officer or a stern-faced politician. Instead, he found himself looking at a small female with graying hair and kind eyes. She wore simple civilian clothes and stood alone, without even a single bodyguard. "Admiral Kexton," she said, offering what humans called a smile. "I am Ambassador Sarachen. Thank you for coming such a long way to meet with me." Kexton's tactical mind immediately began analyzing potential threats. The human's relaxed posture, the absence of security, the choice to send an elderly female to face the Galactic Council's greatest military commander. None of it made sense. Humans were supposed to be aggressive and violent, yet this one seemed as harmless as a Deltan peacekeeper. "Ambassador Chun," Kexton replied stiffly. "The Galactic Council has authorized me to discuss your species' recent territorial expansions. Of course, please sit wherever you're comfortable. I've had the station prepare refreshments suitable for Vorthani biology. I hope you'll find them acceptable." The conference table had been set with traditional Vorthani ceremonial items, harmony crystals, position indicators showing proper rank hierarchy, even the correct lighting spectrum for Vorthani eyes. Kexton was stunned. Most alien species couldn't even pronounce Vorthani names correctly, yet this human had arranged every detail perfectly. "You know our customs," he observed, taking his designated seat. "I make it my business to understand the people I work with, Admiral. Your culture values honor, hierarchy, and proper respect for military achievement. I've read about your victories at the Siege of Kaulos and the liberation of the methane fields. Quite impressive tactical work." Kexton felt off balance. He had prepared for threats, demands, or military posturing. He had not prepared for genuine respect and detailed knowledge of his career. "You study military history?" "Among other things. I was actually a professor before becoming an ambassador. Xenocultural studies, with a focus on military traditions. I find that understanding how different species approach warfare tells you a great deal about their values." As they began discussions, Kexton found himself increasingly confused. The human spoke knowledgeably about galactic law, showed respect for council authority, and seemed genuinely interested in finding peaceful solutions. When Kexton raised the issue of human territorial expansion, Ambassador Chen didn't become defensive or aggressive. "You're absolutely right to be concerned, Admiral. Humans do expand aggressively, and I understand how that appears threatening to established civilizations. But perhaps I can offer some context that might change your perspective." She activated a holographic display showing human space. "Every world we've claimed has been either uninhabited or willingly joined us after requesting protection. You see, humans aren't the only species in the galaxy that other races fear." The display highlighted several systems. The Zarathi slavers have been raiding these colonies for decades. The Crimson Horde pirates controlled this entire sector. The Vorgan Collective was strip mining these worlds with no regard for native ecosystems. When these populations asked for help, we provided it. Kexton studied the data with growing surprise. Every human military action had been in response to attacks on weaker species. The humans hadn't been conquering territory. They had been playing protector to anyone who asked for help. But your methods, Kexton protested. The battles are so brutal. Ambassador Chen's expression grew sad. Yes, they are. Humans fight differently because we learned early that showing mercy to truly evil enemies often means abandoning the innocent people depending on you. When we fought the Zarathi slavers, we couldn't afford to let any escape to raid again. When we faced the Crimson Horde, we had to make sure other pirate groups understood the consequences of attacking human-protected worlds. She pulled up more recordings, this time showing the aftermath of human victories. Kex then watched as human soldiers distributed food to liberated populations, helped rebuild destroyed colonies, and treated wounded enemies with the same medical care given to their own troops. We fight brutally, Admiral, but only during the fighting. Once our enemies surrender or the battle ends, we become something different entirely. Every species that has joined the Terran Republic did so voluntarily, and all of them maintain their own governments and customs. Kex then found his worldview shifting uncomfortably. The Galactic Council believes you are a threat to galactic peace. Perhaps we are, Chen admitted, but not in the way you think. We're a threat to those who prey on the weak, who ignore suffering because intervention would be inconvenient. The Council has maintained peace by avoiding conflict, but that peace has come at the cost of allowing terrible injustices to continue unchecked. She activated another display showing piracy statistics, slavery incidents, and territorial aggressions by various species. Since humans entered galactic space, incidents of piracy have decreased by 70%. Slave raids have virtually stopped in human-protected space. Aggressive territorial expansion by militaristic species has slowed significantly. Because they fear you, Kexton said. Yes, and sometimes fear is the only thing that stops a bully from hurting others. The Vorthani understand this, Admiral. Your own people became galactic peacekeepers because your reputation for honor and military skill convinced others to think twice before starting wars. The comparison struck Kex then deeply. His people had indeed used their military reputation to maintain order, but they had done so through the threat of intervention rather than actual violence. The humans seemed to achieve similar results, but through demonstrated willingness to fight when necessary as the hours passed. Kex then found himself drawn into deeper conversation with Ambassador Chen. She shared stories of human history that painted a complex picture of her species. They had indeed been violent and warlike, but that violence had been directed primarily against others who threatened the innocent or oppressed the weak. May I ask you something personal, Admiral? Chun said during a break in negotiations. You may ask, Kex then replied, though Vorthani tradition dictated caution about personal questions from aliens. What made you choose a military career? Most Vorthani I've studied enter the service out of family tradition or social obligation. But your record suggests a different motivation. Kex then felt his mandibles tighten. How could this human possibly know enough about his background to make such an observation? What do you mean? You joined the fleet immediately after the Shadowfen massacre, when you were barely old enough to serve. You requested assignment to the most dangerous postings, fought in conflicts that had nothing to do with Vorthani interests. That suggests personal motivation rather than cultural duty. The memory stirred old pain in Kexton's chest. The Shadowfen colony had been a peaceful research station where his younger sister had worked as a botanist. When the Zarathi raiders attacked, the Galactic Council had debated intervention for 3 days while the colonists screamed for help over emergency channels. By the time a rescue fleet arrived, everyone was dead or taken as slaves. The Council failed them, Kex then said quietly. They followed proper diplomatic procedures while innocent people died. Shin nodded with understanding. And you decided that sometimes proper procedures aren't enough. Sometimes someone has to be willing to act, even when the action itself is ugly or politically inconvenient. How do you know about Shadowfen? That information is classified in Vorthani military records. Because my husband was the human intelligence analyst who first reported the attack. He spent 3 sleepless days trying to convince his superiors to mount a rescue mission, even though Earth had no official relationship with the Shadowfen colony. When the reports of the massacre came in, he resigned from intelligence work and became a teacher. He couldn't bear the thought of watching while people suffered and died. Kexton stared at her in shock. Your husband died 5 years ago fighting Crimson Horde pirates who were raiding refugee convoys. He was 63 years old and had no business being in a combat zone, but he couldn't stand the thought of children being sold into slavery while bureaucrats debated proper response protocols. The pain in her voice was unmistakable, and Kexton realized why this small, seemingly gentle human had been chosen as an envoy. She understood the cost of both action and inaction. She knew what it meant to lose someone to violence, but also what it meant to lose someone to the violence that comes from standing by while evil acts continue unchecked. I'm sorry for your loss, Kexton said, meaning it. Thank you. The point I'm trying to make, Admiral, is that humans and Vorthani might be more alike than either side realizes. We both understand that sometimes peace requires the willingness to fight. The difference is that humans learned this lesson through centuries of failure, while the Vorthani learned it through wisdom. Chun activated another display, this one showing detailed proposals for cooperation between human and Galactic Council forces. What if, instead of seeing human expansion as a threat, the Council viewed it as an opportunity? Human forces could handle the types of conflicts that the Council finds politically difficult, while Council diplomats could help prevent conflict from starting in the first place. Kexton studied the proposals with growing interest. Joint patrols to suppress piracy, coordinated responses to slave raids, shared intelligence about emerging threats. It was an elegant solution that played to each side's strengths. The Council would never agree to legitimize human military methods, he said. They wouldn't have to. Humans could operate under the existing emergency response provisions in the Galactic Charter. When immediate action is required to prevent massive loss of life, any member species can act first and seek Council approval afterward. The provision exists, but no one has used it because most species prefer to avoid the political complications. And humans don't mind political complications. We're already considered dangerous and unpredictable. We might as well be usefully dangerous and unpredictable. Kexton found himself laughing, an unusual display of emotion for a Vorthani in formal negotiations. This human had somehow managed to reframe the entire conflict as an opportunity for mutual benefit rather than a clash of incompatible philosophies. There's something else to consider, Admiral, Chun continued. The galaxy is not static. New threats emerge constantly. The Void Cult has been recruiting followers in the Outer Rim, preaching that all organic life should be eliminated. The Hive consciousness continues to expand its territory through forced assimilation. The Temporal Warlords have been conducting raids across dimensional barriers. Kexton knew about these threats, but the Council had classified them as distant concerns requiring long-term diplomatic solutions. You think these will become immediate problems? I think they already are immediate problems that the galaxy has been too polite to acknowledge. When these threats move beyond the fringe systems into civilized space, the Council will need allies who aren't afraid to fight. Humans have experience dealing with existential threats. We've faced extinction several times in our history and learned how to survive. As their conversation continued, Kexton began to see Ambassador Chen's true strategy. She wasn't trying to convince him that humans were peaceful. She was demonstrating that their violence served a necessary purpose. More importantly, she was showing that humans could be directed toward threats that everyone agreed needed to be addressed. The genius of her approach was that it turned human aggression from a problem into a solution, while simultaneously offering the Galactic Council a way to maintain their moral authority without having to dirty their own hands with necessary, but unpleasant military actions. The negotiations have been ongoing for 12 hours when Kexton received an urgent communication from his flagship. Commander Zilnara's voice carried barely controlled panic. Admiral, We're detecting massive energy signatures approaching the system. Unknown vessel configuration, but the power readings are off the scale. Kexton's training kicked in immediately. Red alert. Prepare for combat. I'm returning to the ship immediately. But Ambassador Chun placed a gentle hand on his arm. Admiral, may I suggest an alternative? Ambassador, my fleet is potentially under attack. I cannot waste time with diplomatic protocols. What if this isn't a coincidence? What if this is exactly the kind of situation where human and Galactic Council forces could demonstrate the value of cooperation? Kexton hesitated. Every instinct told him to rush back to his command, but something in Chin's calm demeanor gave him pause. You knew this was going to happen. No, but I prepared for the possibility. Admiral, the galaxy is full of threats that prey on isolated fleets and diplomatic meetings. Someone may have seen this as an opportunity to eliminate both human and Vorthani leadership in one strike. Through the station's communication system, they could hear reports flooding in from Kexton's fleet. The approaching vessels were identified as void cult ships, fanatics who believed organic life was a disease to be purged from the universe. 3 massive dreadnoughts accompanied by a swarm of fighter craft, all bearing the distinctive black hulls and energy weapons that had terrorized fringe colonies for years. My ships can handle 3 dreadnoughts, Kexton said, though he felt less confident than he sounded. Against void cult tactics? Admiral, they'll ram your ships before allowing themselves to be defeated. How many of your vessels are you prepared to lose? The truth was sobering. Void cult ships were known for suicide attacks and weapons that ignored conventional shielding. Even in victory, Kexton's fleet would suffer heavy casualties. What do you propose? Let me contact my ship. Humans have fought the void cult before. We know their weaknesses. Chin activated her communicator, speaking in rapid human language. Within minutes, a response came back that she translated for Kexton. The human diplomatic vessel carries a full military AI and fabrication systems. They can produce specialized weapons designed specifically for void cult technology. But they'll need protection while they work. Your single ship wants to hide behind my battle fleet. Not hide. Coordinate. Admiral, human tactics work because we're willing to take risks that other species consider insane. But those risks pay off when we're working with allies who can provide strategic support. Kexton made a decision that went against every protocol in the Vorthani military manual. Commander Zilnara formed defensive formation around the human diplomatic vessel. Protect them while they prepare weapons. What followed challenged everything Kexton thought he knew about human military capabilities. The small diplomatic ship suddenly began manufacturing weapons systems that shouldn't have been possible given its size. Somehow, the humans had packed industrial fabrication equipment into a vessel barely large enough for a standard crew quarters. How is this possible? He asked Chun. Human engineering philosophy. If you can't make it bigger, make it smarter. Our AIs can design and build equipment specifically tailored for immediate threats. Most species develop weapons over years of research and testing. We develop them in hours when we have to. The Void Cult fleet had reached the outer system and was accelerating toward the diplomatic station. Kexton watched his tactical displays with growing unease. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, their energy signatures indicating power levels that exceeded anything in his experience. Admiral, came Chin's voice over the communication system. We're ready to begin the attack. Our tactical AI has analyzed their formations and identified the optimal strike pattern. But we need your heavy ships to execute the primary assault. What do you need us to do? Exactly what Vorthani ships do best. Coordinated fleet maneuvers with perfect timing. Our weapons will create openings, but only if your ships can exploit them at precisely the right moments. The battle that followed became legendary in galactic military history. Human innovation combined with Vorthani tactical precision created a synergy that neither side could have achieved alone. The human ship's custom-built weapons disrupted void, cult energy systems at exactly the moments when Vorthani heavy artillery could penetrate their defenses. Kex then found himself coordinating with human tactical AI in real time, something that should have been impossible given the communication delays and translation barriers. But the human systems adapted to Vorthani command protocols so seamlessly that it felt like commanding an extension of his own fleet. The first Void Cult dreadnought fell within minutes, its hull cracking open as Vorthani antimatter torpedoes found their target through gaps created by human electromagnetic pulse weapons. The second ship attempted to ram the diplomatic station, but coordinated fire from both fleets reduced it to debris before it could complete its attack run. The third dreadnought tried a different tactic, releasing clouds of nanoscale weapons designed to consume any organic matter they encountered. Kex then felt a moment of despair. His ships had no defense against such weapons. But the human diplomatic vessel moved directly into the nanomachine cloud, its hull somehow absorbing the deadly particles without effect. Ambassador Chen's voice came over the communication channel, calm as ever. Admiral, Void Cult nanomachines are programmed to target specific organic compounds. Human ships carry defensive systems based on our experience fighting similar weapons. We can clear a path for your ships to reach the final target. The human vessel carved a tunnel through the deadly cloud, its hull glowing with energy discharges as defensive systems neutralized thousands of nanoscale attackers. Kexthan's flagship followed in its wake, close enough to see the intricate dance of human technology defeating an enemy weapon that had terrorized the galaxy for years. When the final Void Cult ship exploded under concentrated fire from both fleets, Kexthan felt something he hadn't experienced since his early days as a junior officer: genuine awe at a tactical performance. The humans had turned a potentially devastating attack into a demonstration of what coordination between their species could accomplish in the aftermath of the battle. Kexthan stood once again in the diplomatic station's conference chamber. But everything had changed. The formal distance between him and Ambassador Chun had evaporated, replaced by the mutual respect that comes from facing death together and emerging victorious. "Your ship," Kexthan said, reviewing the tactical recordings. "It's not a diplomatic vessel at all." Chun smiled with genuine warmth. "It is now. But you're right. It was originally designed as a deep space explorer with military support capabilities. When we learned about this meeting, we thought it wise to be prepared for the unexpected. You anticipated an attack. We anticipated the possibility of one. Admiral, humans have learned that diplomatic meetings are often targeted by groups who benefit from continued conflict. The Void Cult, pirate organizations, slave traders, they all have reasons to want humans and the Galactic Council to remain enemies." Kexthan considered this perspective. Throughout his career, he had focused on military threats and political conflicts, but he had given little thought to the economic forces that benefited from instability. Pirates and slavers did indeed prosper when major powers were too busy fighting each other to patrol remote systems effectively. So this was all planned? The small ship, the appearance of vulnerability, even your personal story about your husband. "Everything I told you about my husband was true, Admiral. His death is why I do this job. But yes, we chose our approach carefully. Humans have learned that sometimes the best way to make a strong impression is to appear weak while demonstrating hidden strength." Chun activated a new holographic display showing the expanded tactical data from their recent battle. "But consider what we accomplished together. Your fleet and our technology stopped a Void Cold attack that could have destroyed dozens of colonies. More importantly, we proved that cooperation between our species is not only possible, but highly effective. The Galactic Council will want a full report. Of course. And I hope your report will include recommendations for future joint operations. The galaxy faces threats that require both our capabilities, your tactical expertise, and our adaptive technology." Kex then found himself nodding in agreement. The battle had demonstrated weaknesses in traditional Galactic Council military doctrine, but it had also shown how those weaknesses could be addressed through human partnership. The Council prized elegant, minimal casualty solutions to conflicts, while humans excelled at defeating enemies who refused to be defeated elegantly. There will be resistance, Kexton warned. Many council members believe that humans are too unpredictable to be reliable allies, which is why you're the perfect advocate for this partnership, Admiral. Your reputation for honor and tactical brilliance is unquestionable. If you recommend cooperation with humans, the Council will listen. Chun pulled up a comprehensive proposal for human council military cooperation. The document covered everything from joint training programs to coordinated responses for different types of threats. But what impressed Kexton most was how thoroughly the humans had researched council politics and military culture. You've been planning this for years, he realized. Humans are good at long-term strategy when we need to be. We saw that eventually, either we would fight the Galactic Council or work with them. Fighting would cost everyone dearly and leave the galaxy vulnerable to threats like the Void Cult. Working together offers benefits that neither side could achieve alone. As they finalized the details of their agreement, Kex then reflected on how completely his understanding of humans had changed. They were indeed aggressive and dangerous, but their aggression was directed and purposeful. They fought not because they enjoyed violence, but because they were willing to accept the costs of violence when the alternative was allowing greater suffering to continue. Ambassador, Kex then said as they prepared to return to their respective fleets, "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you truly believe this partnership will work? Or are you simply hoping that humans can change their nature enough to cooperate with other species?" Shin considered the question carefully. "Admiral, I don't want humans to change their nature. Our willingness to fight when fighting is necessary is precisely what makes us valuable as allies. What I hope is that other species will come to understand that sometimes the most peaceful solution is to ensure that aggressive, predatory forces know they will face overwhelming retaliation if they prey on the innocent. A peace maintained through strength. A peace maintained through the credible threat of strength, yes. The Verthani understand this concept better than most council species. Your people have kept the peace in dozens of systems simply because potential aggressors know that attacking weak colonies would bring the Verthani fleet down on them." Kex then realized that Chun had identified the fundamental similarity between their species. Both understood that mercy and compassion require the backing of force to be effective. The difference was that humans had learned this lesson through bitter experience, while the Verthani had learned it through military tradition and strategic thinking. 3 months later, Kex then stood before the full Galactic Council to present his report on human council cooperation. The chamber was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all eager to hear whether the feared human expansion would continue unchecked. "Honored counselors," Kex then began, "I have spent considerable time observing human military capabilities and diplomatic intentions. My conclusion is that humanity represents not a threat to galactic peace, but an opportunity to achieve a more robust and sustainable peace than we have previously known." He presented the tactical recordings from the Void Cult battle, showing how human adaptability and Verthani coordination had defeated an enemy that either force might have struggled against alone. He shared Ambassador Chen's proposals for joint operations, explaining how human willingness to engage in politically difficult conflicts could complement the Council's preference for diplomatic solutions. "The humans ask not for unconditional acceptance," Kexton concluded, "but for the opportunity to prove their value as allies against the threats that face all civilized worlds. Based on my observations, I believe we should grant them that opportunity." The vote was closer than Kexton had hoped, but it was enough. The Terran Republic was granted associate membership in the Galactic Council, with human forces authorized to operate under Council emergency protocols when immediate action was required to protect civilian populations. As Kexton left the Council chambers, he reflected on how a single conversation had changed his understanding of what it meant to be a protector of peace. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was allow dangerous people to go unchallenged. And sometimes the most peaceful thing you could do was ensure that good people were never afraid to fight when fighting became necessary.